Welcome back to The Healing Habit, where we talk about the importance of healing and how to make it a part of your everyday life. I'm your host, Cassie Sharp.
And I am Renatha Lollis.
And today, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, we're going to be talking about the benefits of forgiveness.
Yes.
And it's really interesting when you just consider all of the ways in which forgiveness can impact your life. And so I thought it was really important for us to look at forgiveness and to understand the benefits that each person can achieve if they live a more forgiving life.
Yes, I love that so much. Before we get started today, I just wanted to ask a question that I had heard somebody ask on a panel, and I thought this was such a great question to just start off with.
Okay.
What is something, Renatha, that you have changed your mind on in the past few years?
Ooh. That's interesting. That's a really good question.
I know, it's a really good question.
Something I've changed my mind on. I think, because of the work that I have an opportunity to do as a life coach and as a strategic advisor, I think, interestingly enough, it is about the topic of forgiveness. So I had the amazing opportunity to participate in the Human Flourishing Program with Harvard University, and I was trained as a forgiveness champion.
Yeah.
And they have a concept as part of that program where they're talking about decisional versus emotional forgiveness. And what I changed my mind about was that you have to feel like you have forgiven in order for forgiveness to take place.
Whoa.
I know, because I believe that I haven't truly forgiven a person unless I feel like I have forgiven them.
Right.
But there's this distinction between making a decision to forgive versus the emotion of forgive that comes with forgiveness.
Yes.
So I can make the decision to forgive in my mind. And over time, as my heart heals from the offense, I can begin to feel the emotions that accompany forgiveness.
It's like your feelings come into alignment with the decision to forgive. And we did talk about that in one of our recent episodes.
Yes.
I actually was speaking with somebody about this the other day. She was just going through like a really, really tough time. And she was like, I just want to go home. I don't want to be here in this moment right now. And I told her, because there was one of those situations where we just had to kind of power through. And I told her, I said, did you know that your feelings don't dictate what you do?
Yes.
And they don't have any power over you. I said, I told her, your feelings don't control you. Yeah. And it was something that I actually learned from this podcast. I think it was the last episode where that just really struck me. And she was like, wow, you know what? My feelings actually don't control me. Yeah. And it's so cool, because I think oftentimes we get stuck in this mentality of like, well, if I'm not feeling it, then I must not be actually doing it the right way.
Exactly right. And that was a concept for me that is especially about forgiveness.
Yeah.
Is that I really thought I had to feel like I had forgiven.
Yes.
But in that training, it's going through this and looking at the decision to make or to forgive someone versus the emotions that accompany it. Those are two very different things.
Yes.
And also, to your point, feelings aren't facts. They're information. And so this information can try to, make us believe that we haven't entered into a forgiveness or move or a forgiving posture. But in reality, if I've made the decision to forgive, my body moves into alignment over time. And so that's something that I've changed my mind about in the last year. So that's a great question.
It is a great question. Well, I feel warmed up. Do you feel warmed up?
I feel warmed up.
Okay, let's get started. So we're going to be talking today about the benefits of forgiveness.
Yes.
And I just love this because, and let's just frame it this way, the benefits of forgiveness as a healing habit.
Yes.
Because it is so crucial to understand that forgiveness is, like we've mentioned in previous episodes, the first step in the healing journey.
Yes. So if we think about forgiveness as a muscle that we can exercise that can get stronger and stronger over time. And it is an amazing tool that we have in our tool bag for healing. And just like any tool bag, it's only as good, or the tools are only as good as the use that we make of them. And so forgiveness is just one of the tools that we have in our bag for healing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So we're talking today about forgiveness as a benefit, as a tool for healing. So I guess we'll just start with, what are the benefits?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so let's break this up into 3 different buckets, if you will.
Yeah.
So first, we're going to look at forgiveness from a physical standpoint and the benefits. Then we'll look at it from an emotional standpoint. And then finally, we'll wrap up with the relational benefits of forgiveness. Now, we don't tend to think about an emotional response or a decision that could have that level of impact across our life. But forgiveness is one of those things that when we accept or move into the habit of becoming a more forgiving person, our physicality, our body, our health is actually impacted by this decision. So there's been research that's done by the Mayo Clinic and Johns Hopkins. There are several different research papers that have been written about this. The Harvard University, as I mentioned earlier, their Human Flourishing Program has done extensive research about forgiveness and its benefits. And there are a few common things that have been noted in these different studies about the physical benefits of forgiveness. First, interestingly enough, is the lowering of blood pressure.
Yes.
So your body's blood pressure, the rate at which your blood vessels are pumping blood, can be impacted by forgiveness. Stress, lowering stress is another physical benefit. So the stress hormone cortisol is actually decreased when we forgive. It could even help you have better sleep. Forgiveness. Nice. It can impact your immune system, your cardiovascular health. They've even had studies that have tied unforgiveness to cancer.
Yes.
So as we start thinking about the physical benefits of healing, it makes a strong case for us to operate in a more forgiving mindset, because our physical bodies are going to be positively impacted by forgiveness.
Wow. And I know in our last episode, we talked about the consequences of not forgiving.
Yes.
And it's truly, I mean, it's the same cake, right?
Yes. Just the other side of that coin.
It's the other side of that. So today is a more hopeful podcast where you're talking about, hey, if you can actually get yourself to the point where you make the decision to forgive, then you will start to actually see your life unfolding in a more healthy way.
Yes.
Which is great. I would even venture to say you might even make healthier decisions for yourself operating in that mindset of health.
100%. So in thinking about that, that's the perfect segue into the emotional benefits.
Yeah.
Because as we move emotionally into becoming a more forgiving person, it has actually improved mental health. That's one of the benefits that comes with it. Now, the intention here is that as we are attempting to build healing habits, when we can understand what's in it for us, what I like to call the WIFM, when I can understand what's in it for me, my ability to adopt any new behavior is going to increase. So if I am thinking about how to live a life that is going to be focused on healing as a way of being and doing, the benefits are always going to be there to cheer me on and encourage me to continue in the behavior. But if I don't understand the benefits, it can also make it a little bit difficult for me to be able to have long-term success in this behavior. Who doesn't want to feel better physically? Who doesn't want to have better sleep?
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to have less stress?
Yeah.
All of these things are benefits which can, if we focus on them, be the catalyst that we need to operate in forgiveness as a lifestyle.
This is such a powerful tool. And I don't think people understand what they're missing out on. Because it's something that, I mean, if you are at risk for like the high
blood pressure.
Yeah, high blood pressure. Or there's like ways that people are quite literally hospitalized from these types of health issues. So to think about something like the decision of forgiveness actually taking you out of that.
Well, I'll give you a personal example.
Yeah.
When I was in my early 20s, I had just graduated from college and I had gotten a brand new job. It was my first job in corporate America. And I had a really, really challenging boss, really challenging. It was a tough situation. And I was so stressed out at 24 years old that I developed a stress-related disorder.
Wow.
And I had so much anger at this woman, and I was so stressed out that it took a toll on my health that I actually had to take time off of work to recover from this stress-related disorder.
Yeah.
And so even in my own life, the impact of stress and anger and unforgiveness took a toll on my health that I had to take time off of work to recover so that I could come back into the environment. And not until I was able to no longer carry the burden that this job was placing on my shoulders and was able to actually release it was that I was actually able to thrive and to have success and come out from under this stress-related disorder in my early 20s. And the doctor struggled with being able to diagnose what was wrong with me because he said there is no reason that a young woman in her 20s should have this type of disorder.
Yeah.
But I wanted to achieve so badly and to succeed that I had stressed myself out to the point where I literally had to leave work for a period of time. And until I was able to take control back from my emotions and to forgive what had been done to me in this environment, was I at that point finally able to move forward. So the physicality of stress and unforgiveness can have an immense impact on our life and our well-being.
Yeah.
And we don't even think about those things.
Did you stay in that work environment after you realized that this was having this kind of negative health toll on you?
I stayed in that environment for another couple of months until I was able to take control of my emotions and say that if this environment isn't going to change, then I have to be the person who makes the decision for what's best for me and for my health.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I still had to do the work of forgiveness. I still had to do the work of healing so that moving forward, my life would not be impacted by this negative experience.
No, because could you imagine taking that into your next job?
Yes.
And people say that where you left off one place, if you're carrying that around with you, you're going to start off exactly where you left off in the other place. And people get into I was reading this in a book, people get into cycles like this where maybe you were treated one way in one environment and then you go into your next job and the same thing happens. And then you leave that job and you go into the next job. And at a certain point you have to wonder, why is this happening to me in every single workplace that I'm in? And I honestly wonder if you're still partnered with the original offense to the point that it's just snowballing.
Yes. So what is interesting about the brain is that it loves order. Mm-hmm. It loves a pattern.
Loves making patterns.
It does.
My brain is a big pattern brain.
Yes. It enjoys patterns.
Yes.
And so when I go into a new environment, I'm going to be taking all of that old information with me.
Yeah.
And as I step into this new environment, I'm going to be looking for patterns that are similar. And I'm going to try to conform my new environment to my old environment, whether I'm aware of it or not, because my brain likes a pattern. Yeah. And so to your point of taking that old defense with you into the new place, it is very easy to project your experience from your previous manager and to make the assumption that the current manager is exactly the same way, when in reality, that may not be the case at all. But the thing that is consistent in both of those scenarios is that I take me with me everywhere I go.
Wow.
And so when I move from one experience to the next, if I believe that the pattern exists, I will act as if my old experience is true here, and I will create the same results, whether I'm aware of it or not. And so patterns themselves operate under the radar. We don't know we're operating in a pattern. Mm-hmm. And unless you know you're operating in a pattern, that you can only exit it once you're aware that a pattern exists. Mm-hmm. And unforgiveness is one of those patterns, or holding on to offense becomes a pattern that can weave itself throughout your life, and we're not even aware of it.
Wow.
And we can move into a mindset of a victim, because let's be clear, sometimes we are victims. Mm-hmm. Sometimes things do happen to us, but I get to decide whether or not I'm going to live as a victim or as a person who was victimized, who ultimately became victorious.
Yes.
I get to make that decision, that I can move from victim to victor. And part of that process is being able to release offense.
Wow. There's so many things that were just running through my brain. It's so hard for me to come up with one question to ask you, but I'm just thinking about relationships.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's something that many people find themselves. I mean, you'll hear break the cycle.
Yeah.
It goes from grandparent to parent to child to grandchild. I mean, even something like addiction. It's really interesting, and I would honestly venture to say that maybe there's a cycle of unforgiveness in someone's family.
Yes.
But we partner with these things, and then it's just something that rolls into the next generation and the next generation until it gets broken off by somebody who makes the decision that they don't want to be a part of that anymore.
Right.
And so when it comes into relationships, you'll hear people say, oh, I just, like, that person has found themselves in a cycle of toxic, abusive relationships. Yeah. And is it because that one relationship that started it created something in that person's brain that now they're partnering with it? And how does forgiveness play into something like that?
That's an interesting question. So there really isn't a one-size-all approach to this, because every situation is going to be different. Mm-hmm. So the example that you gave, someone partnering with a toxic relationship and then that sort of creating the tone for future relationships, is that possible? Absolutely. But this can happen in so many different ways. So it isn't really sort of one on ramp. So many different ways, from the environment that we grow up in, to the culture that we're a part of, to the environment that we're exposed to, and to the relational traumas that we have previously had. All of these can have an impact on how we show up in relationships. Mm-hmm. Now, that pattern of unforgiveness can definitely be something that is cultural or environmental. So let's just say that you grew up in a family of grudge holders, that your grandfather was a big grudge holder and he taught your mom how to hold grudges, and your mom in turn then taught you. Mm-hmm. As you continue to operate in this family pattern and in the environment that you're in, this is absolutely accepted behavior. There's nothing wrong about it. There's nothing abnormal about it. You've seen your mom, your aunts and uncles, your cousins operate within this pattern of behavior. But once we are exposed to something different, and we begin to learn that this pattern no longer serves us, we typically have to have a pattern disruptor. Mm. So if I'm operating in a way that I have always operated, this is what I have done, this is what I've always seen, I don't know that there's anything negative about this, right? But when a pattern disruptor, something steps into my life that helps me understand that this pattern isn't serving me. Not only is it not serving me, it's not healthy, it's not productive, and in some cases, it's actually harming me. And so a pattern disruptor can be anything. It can be a pain point, that you can have a situation that you responded in the way you've always responded, and now there's pain associated with it. It could be a person, someone who enters your life, who then gives you a different way of looking at a situation. It can be a podcast that you listen to and you gain new information. Yeah. So now you're looking at this pattern in a way that you never have before. So a pattern disruptor can step into your life, can give you a different perspective, and you can step out of that pattern now because you're aware it exists.
It's funny, you know, there's somebody who mentors me, just one person, one of my leaders in life, and we were in a forum and asking her some questions, and they said, well, how did you get to the point that you got? Because she came from a place of like being kind of a bitter person and very like almost like unempathetic, like just she was a wall, like she's correcting somebody at work and this person is like crying and she's like, I don't have time for this, you know, like that kind of stuff. And now she's like a much more loving person, and they're like, what changed? How did you get to that point? And she said, pain. And so pain is a pattern disruptor, as we know. And she said, I hurt a lot of people and I lost a lot of people, and that's how I got to the point that I am, because like we just said, pain is that pattern disruptor.
Can be.
are there positive pattern disruptors? Do we have to go through just like the worst of the worst things before we realize? And I know you said like, you know, like listening to a podcast is one of those like if you're listening, please don't go through the pain, you know?
Yes. And that's a really great question because there are positive pattern disruptors. Here's the challenge. Most of us are typically moved by the ones that have more painful or more sometimes negative interactions or negative impacts. But here's what I will tell you. Positive pattern disruptors can have a profound impact on your life. A positive pattern disruptor can be a mentor, someone who sees the value in you and who's investing time. Education is a positive pattern disruptor. The more you learn, the more you grow, the more you understand and have exposure to different ways of being and doing, the more positive that pattern disruptor can be. So there are lots of ways that you can interact with positive change or positive ways that you're going to be informed of those patterns that exist in your life. But in thinking about this positive impact, as we look at the relational impact or the relational benefits of forgiveness, it is also a positive pattern disruptor because when we have the benefit of forgiveness on relationships is greater intimacy and connection. And so if I am able to be a forgiving person, then I am inviting positive relationships into my life that then gives those people the ability to speak into my patterns and be those positive pattern disruptors. And so as we think about all of the benefits that come along with forgiveness on our relationships, whether it is greater intimacy, whether it is less hostility, whether it is the removal of shame and regret from our lives, those relational benefits help us in all manner of different ways, mentally as well as emotionally.
Wow, I love that. It's very like exponential.
Yes.
Which is so
Good
cool.
Word.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Just call me Renatha Lollis. No, but it is because, and I think that is the biggest benefit because when you get around the healthy people, you in turn become healthier.
Yes. It's one of the greatest benefits of healthy relationships. It's we have this ability to play off of each other and receive from each other and use each other as tools for growth. So as we enter into situations where offense happens, it is an opportunity for us to exercise that forgiveness muscle and for us to grow mentally, emotionally, and relationally. We get to do that. So there are positive benefits that come from some of the conflict that happens from relationship, but we get to grow from it. It isn't a situation where we can only expect negativity from these interactions, where we can really begin to expect positive outcomes and then experience those benefits in different areas of life.
And I think it's really interesting too, when we think about these patterns, we can also think of them as laws that we create for ourselves. Every time I interact with that person, this happens. And I think when we get into that victim mindset where that person hurts me or offends me every single time that I interact with them, and then you carry that with me, now it's not just that person does it. Now I'm starting to notice, oh, all it takes is one other person. And now it's, oh, this is something that I just deal with in my life.
Yes. And we learn how to cope with things when the invitation is really to overcome. Right? And I don't want to diminish some of the real pain that people have experienced, where there has been real trauma and there has been devastation that was of no fault of their own. And so we have people who really have been true victims. And even in those places, as we understand that pain has happened, devastation has been caused, that even in those difficult situations, you are still a survivor. And that you can be an overcomer. And you are not what happened to you. You have the ability to move and live and take this experience, because the offense is real, but use it as a catalyst for your own healing, for your own development, and for you to be able to grow both personally and for you to be able to grow emotionally from these experiences. So I want to talk about the emotional benefits of forgiveness. I mentioned a couple of them, where we talked about improved mental health, reduction in negative emotions. This is a really important one because life is challenging enough.
Yeah.
And if I am walking around living and operating under this onslaught of negative emotions, it makes a difficult life even more challenging.
Right.
You get less depression and less anxiety. I am able to deal with my mood in a more productive way. I have freedom from regret. And here's my favorite. I have peace of mind. When we are forgiving, it leads to our own sense of internal well-being. And we get to have this benefit that impacts every area of our life. So now I am able to take that peace of mind with me into not just my relationships, but into my workplace, into my life. And I get the benefit of experiencing that everywhere.
Wow. I am absolutely obsessed with the emotional benefits because I think even though we have stated that our emotions don't control us, I think many of us place high importance on our emotions because obviously we want to be walking around feeling good, right? And so it's interesting. How does one get from forgiveness to experiencing those benefits? Like, is it immediate or is it something that, like we've said, kind of dealing with some of those more micro elements and ultimately experiencing the macro of forgiveness?
Yes. So great question. So with that, some of these benefits, you can feel them immediately. So let's say, for instance, there's an offense that happened against you and it's keeping you up at night, right? And you're thinking about all of the implications of it and how it hurt you, and you're ruminating all of the things that happened. But when you make the decision to forgive, now you have released that person. You have said, you know what, I'm no longer going to hang on to the anger and the resentment. And immediately, in some cases, you have better sleep. That happens instantaneous. Well, but there are some benefits that are going to happen over time. For instance, the lowering of your blood pressure, that's going to happen over time. The lowering of your stress hormone, that's going to happen over time. Even the benefits to your immune system and your cardiac health, these are cumulative benefits that are going to happen over time the more you engage in forgiveness. Right. So some benefits, instantaneous. Others will happen over time.
Yeah. Wow. I think that that's just such a great place to end off there. It's just understanding that it is, you can experience these benefits instantaneously in some capacity, but mainly once you become a more forgiving person. Once you make the decision to be in a constant state of forgiveness. And that doesn't mean like, oh, you hurt me and I'm just going to pretend like that doesn't exist. No. Can we talk about that really quickly before we end? Because I think that I think that there might be some confusion there. Yes. People be like, oh, well, I'm going to be unoffendable, or I'm going to strive to be unoffendable. Yeah. And then they just are like, well, I'll just let people walk all over me.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And absolutely. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
So we move from one extreme where we are holding grudges and holding on to offenses, and then the pendulum swings all the way to the other side. Mm-hmm. And now we become, in some cases, what you characterize as a doormat, somebody who's walking all over you. And both approaches are incorrect. Because what we're not doing when we forgive is that we're not acting as if there wasn't an offense.
Right.
We're being honest and we're naming the offense. Mm-hmm. We're being clear because there was something that happened that offended you. So we have to be honest about that. And it isn't letting someone off the hook. That isn't what forgiveness is. What forgiveness is saying is that I am no longer going to be controlled by the hurt and the anger and resentment that are attached to the offense.
Wow.
I'm choosing to disengage and release that person from offense. Now, I can still have forgiveness for you and still be able to name what you did as wrong. Mm-hmm. I can still say, you hurt me and it was wrong for you to do that, but I choose to forgive you.
Yeah.
I choose to no longer allow you to or no longer hold that offense against you. it does not mean that you are supposed to lay down and allow people to continue to hurt you.
Right.
Because there is an appropriate way for you to be able to establish ways of dealing with and being treated, versus whether they're boundaries, whether they're standards or expectations. Each one of those gives you the ability to be able to have agency over how you respond.
Wow. I am so moved by this understanding. I do want to ask though. So we just spoke about, what it is to not be a doormat.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that spectrum, it's how do we not just walk around in offense constantly?
Great question. Because we live in a society currently in culture where we are all so very easily offended. And as a person who is attempting to live and operate in relationship, I have the personal responsibility of managing my own triggers and my own offense. I can't expect other people to manage that for me. But it is also important that things be done in context. So that old saying, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Okay. So just imagine that there is a loving relationship between a parent and a child. It's not perfect, because no a parent-child relationship is. And while this parent has done the best that they possibly could, they didn't do everything perfectly. Well, as that child grows up and begins to look back and look at their past, there is an opportunity for them to look back at things that have happened with a new lens and have a great level of anger and offense, from things that happened in their childhood. But it's in that moment where that child has to now assess, this is a relationship that is worth saving. If there is benefit in being able to connect with and provide some empathy and looking at what happened from now as an adult and understanding that they may not have had all of the information. So even in that decision of being able to look at this situation, I have to sometimes rise above my feelings to try to see if I can get a wider view. Because sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees. We have so much emotion around an issue that it's difficult for us to be able to see it rightly. So as we rise above this and we look at this relationship as one that could be saved, that does have value, and that it is actually worth fighting for. And this is important, that some relationships can't just be discarded like a piece of paper and just thrown to the side. But there has to be a desire in us, a willingness to be able to say, is there something here that we can salvage, that we can work on, that we can build? And rather than living life expecting offense, which has all of those health problems and all of those negative components that go along with it, because that person who lives in offense is a person who is unforgiving. So they get all of the negative consequences that come with unforgiveness. It is much better to choose to release those offenses and live a life of forgiveness so that you can experience all of the benefits we've talked about today.
Oh my gosh. And I have so many follow-up questions, but I think we should talk about this in the next episode. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Well, I think we're out of time today, but thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Healing Habit. I think this is episode 3. Thank you for listening to episode 3 of The Healing Habit. You guys are with us from the beginning of our journey, and I'm excited to see where this podcast goes. I'm your host, Cassie.
I'm Renatha Lollis.
And we will see you guys in the next episode where we talk about listener feedback.
Yeah.
I'm super excited. All right. We'll talk to you guys later.